Elves are Among the Hidden, the first book in the Shadow Children series. Chapter 1. He saw the first tree shudder and fall far off in the distance. Then he heard his mother call out to the kitchen window, "Luke, inside, now." He had never disobeyed the order to hide, even as a toddler, barely able to walk in the backyard's tall grass. He had somehow understood the fear in his mother's voice. But on this day, the day they began taking the woods away, he hesitated. He took one extra breath of the fresh air, scented with clover and honeysuckle, and coming from far away, pine smoke. He laid his hoe down gently and savored one last moment of feeling warm soil beneath his bare feet. He reminded himself, "I will never be allowed outside again. Maybe never as long as I live." He turned and walked in the house as silently as a shadow. "Why?" he asked at the supper table that night. It wasn't a common question in the Gardner house. There were plenty of hows. How much rain the backfield get? How's the planting going? Even once. What'd Matthew do with the 5/16 French? What's Dad going to do about the busted tire? But why wasn't considered much worth asking, so Luke asked again. "Why do we have to sell the woods?" Luke's dad harrumphed and paused in the midst of shoveling forkfuls of boiled potatoes in his mouth. "Told you before. We didn't have a choice. Government wanted it. You can't tell the government no." Mother came over and gave Luke's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before turning back to the stove. They had defied the government once, with Luke. They had taken all the defiance they had had in them. Maybe more. "We wouldn't have sold the woods if we hadn't had to," she said, ladling out the thick tomatoey soup. "The government didn't ask us if we wanted the houses there." She pursed her lips as she slid the bowls of soup onto the table. "But the government's not going to live in the houses," Luke protested. At 12, he knew better. But sometimes he still pictured the government as a very big, mean, fat person, 2 or 3 times as tall as an ordinary man, who went around yelling at people, "Not allowed!" and "Stop that!" It was because of the way his parents and older brothers talked. Government won't let us plant corn there again. Government's keeping the prices down. Government's not going to like this crop. "Probably some of the people who live in those houses will be government workers," Mother said. "It'll be all city people." If he had been allowed, Luke would have gone over to the kitchen window and peered outside the woods, trying for the umpteenth time to picture rows and rows of houses where the firs and maples and oaks now stood, or had stood. Luke knew from a sneak peek right before supper that half the trees were now toppled. Some already lay on the ground. Some hung at weird angles from their former lofty positions in the sky. Their absence made everything look different, like a fresh haircut exposing a band of untanned skin on the forehead. Even from deep inside the kitchen, Luke could tell the trees were missing because everything was brighter, more open. Scarier. "And then, when the people move in, I have to stay away from the windows?" Luke asked, though he knew the answer. That question made Dad explode. He slammed his hand down on the table. "Then, you gotta stay away now. Everybody and his brother is going to be tramping around back here and to see what's going on. They see you." He waved his fork violently. Luke wasn't sure what the gesture meant, but he knew it wasn't good. Nobody had ever told him exactly what would happen if anyone saw him. Death? That's what was happening to the rump pigs who got stepped on by their stronger brothers and sisters. Death was a fly that stopped buzzing when the swatter hit. He had had a hard time thinking about himself in connection with the smashed fly or the dead pig gone stiff in the sun. It made his stomach feel funny even trying. "I don't think it's fair we gotta do Luke's chores now," Luke's other brother, Mark, grumbled. "Can't he go out sometime? Maybe at night?" Luke waited hopefully for the answer, but Dad just said no without looking up. "It's not fair," Mark said. Mark was the second son. The lucky second, Luke thought when he was feeling sorry for himself. Mark was 2 years older than Luke, and barely a year younger than Matthew, the oldest. Matthew and Mark were easily recognizable as brothers, with their dark hair and chiseled faces. Luke was fair, small-boned, softer-looking. He often wondered if he ever looked tougher like them. Somehow he didn't think so. Luke don't do nothing nohow, Matthew jeered. We won't miss his work at all. It's not my fault, Luke protested. I'd help more if... Mother laid her hands on his shoulders again. Hush, all of you, she said. Luke will do what he can. He always has. The sound of tires on their gravel driveway came through the window. Now, who? Dad started. Luke knew the rest of the sentence. Who could that be? Why are they bothering him now, first chance all day to sit down? It was a question Luke always heard the end of from the other side of the door. Today, skittish because of the woods coming down, he scrambled up faster than usual and dashing for the door to the back stairs. He knew without watching that Mother would come, take his plate from the table and hide it in a cupboard, would slide his chair back into the corner so it would look like an unneeded spare. In 3 seconds, she would hide all evidence that Luke existed, just in time to step on the door and offer a weary smile to the fertilizer salesman or the government inspector or whoever else had come to interrupt their supper. Chapter 2. There was a law against Luke. Not him personally. Everyone liked him. Kids who were born after their parents had already had 2 babies. Luke didn't know if there was anyone else like him. He wasn't supposed to exist. Maybe he was the only one. They did think so after they had their second baby, so they wouldn't have any more. And if there was a mistake and a woman got pregnant anyway, she was supposed to get rid of it. That was how Mother explained it years ago, the first and only time Luke had asked why he had to hide. He had been 6 years old. Before that, he thought only very little kids had to hide. He had thought as soon as he was old as Matthew and Mark, he would get to go around like they did, riding in the back fields, even into town with Dad, hanging their heads and arms out of the pickup window. He had thought as soon as he got old as Matthew and Mark, he could play in the front yard and kick the ball out of the road if he wanted. He had thought as soon as he got as old as Matthew and Mark, he would go to school. They complained about it, whining, geez, we gotta do homework, and who cares about spelling? But they also talked about games at recess and friends who shared candy at lunchtime or loaned them pocket knives to carve with. Somehow, Luke never got as old as Matthew and Mark. The day of his 6th birthday, Mother baked a cake, a special one with raspberry jam dripping down the sides. At supper one night, she put 6 candles on top and placed in front of Luke and said, Make a wish. Staring into the ring of candles, proud that the number of his years finally made a ring all around the cake, Luke suddenly remembered another cake, another ring of 6 candles. Mark's. He remembered Mark's 6th birthday. He remembered it because, even with the cake in front of him, Mark had been whining. But I want to have a party. Robert Joe had a party on his birthday. He got to have 3 friends over. Mother had said, shh, and looked from Mark to Luke, saying something with her eyes that Luke didn't understand. Startled by the memory, Luke let out a breath. 2 of his candles flickered and 1 went out. Matthew and Mark laughed. You ain't getting that wish, Mark said. Baby can't even blow out candles. Luke wanted to cry. He'd forgotten even to make a wish, and even if he had been surprised, he would have been able to blow out 6 candles. He knew he could have, and then he would have gotten, he didn't know, a chance to ride in town the pickup truck, a chance to play in the front yard, a chance to go to school. Instead, all he had was a strange memory that couldn't be right. Surely Luke was thinking about Mark's 7th birthday, or maybe his 8th. Mark couldn't have known Robert Joe when he was 6, because he would have been hiding then, like Luke. So is Robert Joe also a 3rd? I mean, that sentence doesn't make sense to me. Luke thought about it for 3 days. He trailed along behind his mother as she hung washed out in line. made strawberry preserves, scrubbed the bathroom floor. Several times he started to ask, "How old do I have to be before people can see me?" But something stopped him every time. Finally, on the fourth day, after Dad, Matthew, and Mark scrapped back their chairs from the breakfast table and headed out to the barn, Luke crouched by the kitchen side window. One, he wasn't supposed to look out because people driving by might catch a glimpse of his face. He tilted his head to the side and raised up just enough that his left eye was above the level of the window sill. He watched Matthew and Mark running in the sunlight, the tops of their hog boots thumping against their knees. They were in full sight of the world, it seemed. They didn't care. They were racing to the front door of the barn, not the side one off of the backyard that Luke always had to use because it was hidden from the road. Luke turned around and slid to the floor out of sight. "Matthew and Mark never had to hide, did they?" he asked. Is that what the other thing was referring to? Okay. Mother was scrubbing the remains of scrambled eggs out of the skillet. She turned her head and looked at him carefully. "No," she said. "Then why do I?" She dried her hands and left the sink. Something Luke had almost never seen her do if there were still dirty dishes left to be washed. She crouched beside him and smoothed his hair back from his bare forehead. "Oh, Lukey, do you really need to know? Isn't it enough to know things are just different for you?" Yeah, I would want to know because I'm an only child, and if I had siblings and I had to hide and they didn't, yeah, I would want to know. I would want an answer. I'm just putting that out there. He thought about that. Mother was always saying he was the only one who could ever sit on her lap and cuddle. She still read bedtime stories to him, and he knew that Matthew Mark thought he was sissified. Was that what she meant? But he was just younger. He'd grow up. Wouldn't he be like them then? With usual stubbornness, Luke insisted, "I want to know why I'm different. I want to know why I have to hide." So Mother told him. Later, he wished he'd asked more questions, but at the time, it was all he could do to listen to what she told him. He'd feel like he was drowning in the flow of her words. "It just happened," she said. "You just happened, and we wanted you. Wouldn't even let your dad talk about getting rid of you." Luke pictured himself as a baby, left in a cardboard box by the side of the road somewhere, the way Dad said people used to do to kittens back when people allowed to have pets. You can't even have pets in this universe? Wow. Yeah. But maybe that wasn't what Mother meant. The population law hadn't been around long then, and I'd always wanted lots of kids. Before, I mean. Getting pregnant with you was like a miracle. I thought the government would get over their foolishness, maybe even by the time you were born, and then I would have a new baby to show everyone. But you didn't, Luke managed to say. You hid me. His voice sounded strangely hoarse, like it belonged to someone else. His mother nodded. Once I started showing, I didn't go anywhere. That wasn't hard to do. Where do I go anyway? I didn't let Matthew and Mark leave the farm for fear they'd say something. I didn't even say anything about you in the letters to my mother and sister. I wasn't really scared then. It was just superstition. I didn't want to brag. I thought I'd go to the hospital to give birth. I wasn't going to keep you a secret forever. But then... Then what, Luke asked. Mother wouldn't look at him. Then they started running all that on TV about the population police. The population police had always ways of finding out everything. How they'd do anything to enforce the law. Luke glanced toward the hulking television in the living room. He wasn't allowed to watch it. Was that right? And your dad started hearing rumors in town about other babies. Luke shivered. Mother was looking far off into the distance to where the rows of new corn plants met the horizon. I always wanted John, too, she said. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Bless the bed I lay on. But then I thank the Lord that I have you at least. It's worked out the hiding, hasn't it? The smile she offered him was wobbly. He felt he had to help her. Yes, he said. And somehow after that he didn't mind hiding so much anymore. Who wanted to meet strangers anyway? Who would want to go to school where, if Matthew and Mark were to be believed, the teachers yelled and the other boys would double cross you if you didn't watch out? He was special. He was secret. He belonged at home, where his mother always let him have the first piece of apple pie because he was there and the other boys were away. Home, where he could cradle the new baby pigs in the barn, climb the trees at the edge of the woods, throw snowballs up the posts of the clothesline. Home, where the backyard always beckoned, always safe and protected by the house and the barn and the woods. Until they took the woods away. Okay, that's the end of that. And I will redo the rest later. Bye.